You know what's funny? I hear guys blaming their bad genetics all the fucking time for why they can't make any progress. And you guess what? I used to do the exact same thing, but let me tell you, that excuse just doesn't cut it. Sure, genetics do play a role, but they're not the only thing that matter. In fact, having a tougher starting point can actually be an advantage in the long run. It means you will have to work harder and be more disciplined, but it also means you'll build up mental and physical resilience that will serve you well in all areas of life. It's easy to think that starting from a lower point than others should give you some extra credit or sympathy, but that's not the case. I understand how you feel because I've been there myself. However, I realized that everyone has their own journey, and the challenges and struggles you face can make your achievements even more rewarding. So instead of using genetics as an excuse, focus on what you can control and work towards those goals. Let's take the fitness niche, for example. In high school, there are and were always those guys who just had a six-pack and some muscle definition. They already had some muscle mass just through puberty. But I'm not one of those guys. I started off like super skinny. Now I've made a good few months of progress, but before, like, my body fat was dangerously low, which is probably one of the worst starting points to be at because it meant that I was extremely weak as well. Some guys naturally hit puberty and just start getting fat or skinny, while others start gaining muscle mass. Those guys have great genetics, but the ones I can think of right now, I don't think a single one of them is actually consistently training or doing anything else reasonable with their life. They aren't doing anything because they don't face as many struggles or problems due to that, and they don't have a good reason to do anything. But I've seen a lot of people who had this mentality and who didn't struggle as much. They just fell off, especially in their 20s. In terms of fitness, those who had it easy didn't need to work hard to see the results. Didn't face the same struggles as those with worse genetics. I realized that having bigger and tougher problems to overcome can actually be a good thing. When you put in the work and solve those problems, the rewards are much greater. If you start off like me as a skinny guy or someone who wasn't fit, and you consistently trained for months and years to overcome that, your experience will be much more fulfilling. Starting off with a handicap can make your achievements even more rewarding. Think of it as a race, where you start off behind everyone else. If you manage to win despite the disadvantage, you become a champion and receive a louder applause from the crowd. This is the race of life, and it's highly competitive. Overcoming the odds and succeeding when you start from a disadvantaged position will make you a greater champion. It's important to remember that progress in fitness or in any aspect of life is not a linear path. There will be setbacks and plateaus along the way, regardless of genetics. Comparing yourself to others can also be counterproductive, as everyone's journey isn't exactly the same as someone else's might be. The focus should be on your personal growth and progress, rather than on external factors like genetics. Ultimately, perseverance and consistency in the face of obstacles and setbacks is what leads to success. If others stop running in a 2-mile race because it's uncomfortable and they're tired, I'll keep going. I'll even run an extra lap around them just to show them the absolute dominance. Ultimately, know that genetics do play a role in many aspects of our lives, including physical fitness and athletic performance. But it's important to recognize that genetics aren't the only factor, and that with consistent effort and dedication, you can overcome your perceived limitations. Starting with a perceived disadvantage such as bad genetics can actually be a motivating factor to work harder and push yourself further. Overcoming the obstacles and achieving goals will be even more rewarding when it feels like you've had to work harder for them. So bad genetics are actually a good thing. Live in the resistance.